Hello friends, welcome to episode 96 of the Shauna Stitches Podcast. I'm Shauna and this is my crafty channel where I talk about all the things that I've been working on lately. Today is August 25th, 2024. It's Sunday and it is 7:03 p.m. I definitely usually record in the morning, but we'll see how this goes. I will talk about it later, but I had a project I was working on this morning and I wasn't sure if I was going to podcast today or tomorrow. But here we are. My husband has gone off to work and I'm ready to talk about some crafting. I am filming my podcast here in my craft room on the Oregon coast. And as I'm looking at the display, I think my camera's a little crooked, but it's sitting on my tripod, so it's the tripod's fault. We're just going to go with it. Today is a very special day. It's my 45th birthday. Yay! I'll talk more at the end about why today is a very special birthday, but all birthdays are kind of special, right? I am celebrating with some non-alcoholic Prosecco. I've never had it before. Actually, that's not true. I've taken a few sips, but before today, I've never had any. And it tastes just like Prosecco, so it's a fun way to celebrate. And what else? Links down below for everywhere that you can find me. That includes Instagram, Ravelry. I now actually have a separate Ravelry link for my Ravelry group. I haven't really used it, but I have posted the last couple videos as links on there. So if for some reason you might want to send a photo or show me what you're working on, you could do that there because YouTube doesn't let you do that, unfortunately. Unless you share a link with me, that could be fun. What else? Instagram, Ravelry. Wow, it's 7 p.m. and my brain's already gone. Yes, my email is there, Shauna Stitches Podcast at gmail.com. And my Goodreads. I think that's everywhere. And yes, I will have links to all of the projects on a Ravelry page, Ravelry link, in case you want to find out what needles I'm using, what yarn exactly I'm using, the pattern if the name I give you isn't clear, all that good stuff. If for some reason my notes and the pattern notes aren't enough and you still have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer those. And let's talk about some finished objects. I have 4 finished objects today. And let's go in the order that I finished them in. The first finished object are my August Desert Vista Dyeworks socks. Again, if you are new here and if you're not, this is the Blueberry Waffles pattern. And it is what I am using all of my Desert Vista Dyeworks socks for this year. I'm using the same pattern. I used a 2.25 millimeter needle or a US 1, and the Desert Vista Dyeworks colorway is Zombie Frap. And I still am convinced that this might be my all-time favorite color I've ever knit from Season of Desert Vista Dyeworks. Just the pink and that purple with the grimy green just goes so well together. And then that speckled stripe. It's so good. I love it. So yeah, this is the 8th finished pair for the year for the Desert Vista Dyeworks knit along. You knit one project every single month of the year. You can only start on the 1st or later in the month, and you have to finish by the end of the month, however many days that is. So I was successful all year last year, 12 projects in 2023, and so far I have 8 of 12 in 2024. I think that's all I have to say about those. The next finished object was a languishing whip. I finished my husband's pencil socks. These turned out so good. There we go. So I used Knit Pick Stroll for all the colors. Dogwood Heather is the pink. Dove Heather is the gray. Dandelion's the yellow. Cork is the brown, and black is the black. So I think these turned out really well. I did use, or do, I should say, what is that heel called? It's not the Fish Lips Kiss heel, Shadow Wrap. I used the Shadow Wrap heel, and in order to make this a bit deeper, I went beyond half the stitches by 3 on each side. So my husband's sock is a 72 stitch, which I knit on a 2.5 millimeter needle. And instead of knitting across 36 stitches, I knit across 42? Math. Anyway, so all that did was make 4 extra short rows. And he's tried them on. They fit well. There are 2 of them. And these just turned out really fun. I did start knitting these years ago because my husband was a teacher, and he's no longer a teacher, but he still wanted them finished. So I think he might still wear these to work at his current job. That's 2 down, both pairs of socks. And I was going to look. I don't remember what pairs those are for summer sock camp. I was keeping track. How many did I finish? I believe I finished 12 or 13 total pairs and 9 languishing whips for summer sock camp, which is pretty good. And that is ending here on the 31st of August. I have no plans on finishing or starting any more socks before the end of camp. So I think that's pretty good. The other the other finished objects I have are 2 of the scrap yarn basket placemats. So if you didn't see, I think it was the last episode, I finished 1. And so when I say scrap yarn basket, that is the name of the pattern that I used, but it is not for placemats, it's for an actual basket. And all I did was end where I wanted the placemat, however big I wanted it to be, following the pattern exactly. And then for the last row, I did crab stitch. So it just kind of adds a decorative border. And so I'd already finished 1. Now I have 3. And so now that I'm showing these, I can start using them on my table, which makes me so happy. I did not block them. I didn't do anything special there. They will get washed and they will soften up and lay a little bit flatter than they do now. I mean, they're very stiff. But the good news is, I mean, just look how, well, it's hard to show you how thick that is because the middle does this. Looks like a really bad hat. It's a sun hat. Anyway, maybe it's, I don't think it could be a 1/2 inch thick. But anyway, so that should protect the table well. I have cast on the next one, number 4. Still going with this same yarn, which is all acrylic yarn. But I have to say, placemat number 3, I should have caked up the yarn like I have here because it was a real pain to use. It kept just yarn barfing all over the place. So I got smart after finishing number 3. I caked up all the yarn and I could have done it sooner. I just didn't want to cut my ends. So that's that project. I'm thinking for sure I have enough for 1 more, maybe 2. So 4 and 5, I'm hoping. I haven't really looked in my acrylic stash to see when the first ball runs out what I might replace it with, but I'm hoping I can stay kind of in the same theme of colors, even if it's not exactly the same, because I know I don't have those yarns, more of them in my stash. So that's pretty good. Those were those huge, well, I think they're 1 pound, but I don't remember yardage or anything. But I've gotten 1 scrap yarn basket, a huge one, and like I said, 4 or 5 placemats, so that's pretty good. Each of the placemats is using roughly 175 grams of yarn. Those are all of my finished objects. Now let's talk about whips. I have been somewhat monogamous, but what do you call it when you're working on 2 projects monogamously? Is that binogamous? I made that up, so I'm sure it's not a word. The first project that I'm working on is still in this bag that is too small by Midwest Stitches. The bag was a gift from my friend Anna. And what's in here is my melting pot sweater. Look at that. I've made really good progress. Although I feel like it's not quite. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So let's see, right here, that's where I left off last time I talked to you. So it was still just a yoke. I hadn't separated for the sleeves yet, which I have done now. And I've knit quite a bit. Let's see. What's that? Maybe 5-ish inches of the body. The pattern has options for 9 inches of body before the ribbing or 12 inches. And I don't know, I may even do more than that because I do not like a short shirt. I am almost halfway done with my yarn. This is how much I have of the third color, the pink and green stripe. And this will put me exactly at half because for that yarn, it came in 2 50-gram cakes. So it really helps me judge halfway. I think I figured out I'm probably 2 stripe sequence repeats away from being halfway done. Here's a closer look at my colors. I really enjoy how they're working up together. I think it looks so nice. On Ravelry, I call this my Tutti Frutti birthday melting pot sweater. That's the whole name of it. Because these colors just remind me of like Tutti Frutti. They're so happy and fun. And melting pot sweater because it's called the melting pot sweater. My actual colors here, this is the tonal blue, and I know this one is Drama Queen by Creative Obsession, Carrie. She doesn't dye anymore. And the pink is just the neckband so far, but it will be the sleeve ribbing and the hem ribbing as well. And let's see, that blue yarn, that's this one, Vidalana by Knit Crate, that no longer exists. And it's the Ambient sock in Robin's Promise. Oops, and my yarn just hit the ground. And the pink and green one that I showed you, that is Plymouth yarn Happy Feet. And the color is Nothing Fun. It's color 25. Interesting. I did not realize this yarn is 90% wool, 10% nylon. So it has a little bit lesser nylon amount, but for a sweater versus socks, that's okay. So yeah, I'm really happy with how these three are all playing together. So happy. I have been managing to get about 1 stripe sequence done a day, sometimes more, but yesterday and today even less. I haven't touched this in like 2 days. Not because I don't want to, but because I've been working on other things. I am using these needle protectors, stitch stoppers, whatever you want to call them. These are fabulous because I went down on the circumference of the cord. I was using a 40-inch, which is pretty much what the diameter of the sweater is, and I just didn't like tugging on the stitches so much. I really like when I can bunch up quite a few and then knit without constantly having to shift around. But when I do that, the stitches fall off the needle. So the other really interesting thing about this pattern that I will show you is that it instructs you to carry up the yarns on the inside. So you're just twisting them together, but you're not having to cut them. So that means not too many ends to weave in, which is always nice. And it seems to be working well. I'll show you here. There's the back. I don't think you can see any kind of jog there. At least, oh wait, is that not? Well, it helps if I show you. Of course there's not one on the front. There's the actual back. So maybe you can see it if it's up close, but I don't think you can see it from far away. And it's certainly not bad. And it's definitely not gappy like you can get if I was cutting the yarn every single round. So really enjoying this. I figure at the rate that I'm going, I will probably get it finished just in time for it to be too cold to wear it. Because here on the Oregon coast, oh my gosh, this whole last week, it's been fall already. It's been so cold. In fact, the last 2 nights, I went to bed with socks on, and even in the winter when it's freezing, I'll go to bed with socks on and I'll wake up at some point in the middle of the night and take them off, and I didn't. I slept the whole night through with socks on, which is crazy. Okay, one more whip to show you. It's an oldie but a goodie. I have it in this project bag that I sewed myself, and this is my Cozy Memories blanket. All right. So there it gives you an idea of kind of how big it is, what it looks like. I don't know off the top of my head how many squares I've done, but I figured out the other day it was either 181 or 191. I just don't remember off the top of my head. And when I picked this up, what day was it? Tuesday maybe? I was on this purple square. I'd already started it, but I hadn't finished it. And so this week I have knit quite a few squares. They're all so pretty. This one right here, this is my favorite one. I love that. So the reason I picked this up was because I still had some Advent yarns that I had from 2023, and I know that I'm going to be knitting on this again in 2024 for Advent, and so I didn't want to come into it with yarns that were needing to be knit already. So I think I started with 14 and I have 3 left. So I will be able to finish this row off. I have 2 more to go, and then I will start down here with 1 more. I have plenty of other yarns that do need to be added, but they are not technically Advent yarns, so they can get added whenever. But I've really enjoyed working on this. I looked on my Ravelry page and I started this project in April of 2016. Like that's crazy, and I'm only this far. Like it's not huge at all. If you watch Lisa of 72 Stitches, she finished an entire blanket, 500 squares, in less than a year, which is insane. Here I am, 8 years? Yes, 8 years, more than 8 years into this blanket, not even close to done. So obviously I don't work on it very often, but I would like to. I would love to finish this someday. That would be so awesome. I was joking with my husband that I've been in a relationship with this blanket longer than him. And it's true because we started dating in October of 2016 and I started this in April. So yeah, it's a long-term project for sure. This is the bag of leftovers from all the Advents that I knit in. I knit a total of, well, after I finished the 3, I believe it's 61 squares because I had a 25 skein Advent that I made for myself. I had a 25 skein Advent that was gifted to me. And I knit 11 Desert Vista Dyeworks colors. So 25 and 25 is 50 plus 11 is 61. Excuse me. The Prosecco's making me burp. It's gross, I know, but it is what it is. So yeah. What do you think? Will it take me another 8 years to finish this? Because if I do 500 squares like Lisa did, I'm not even halfway. Isn't that crazy? But definitely I have plans to add at least 25 in this year. The advent calendar that I made for myself with some minis that I bought off of Etsy, those are 25. And I have plenty of other yarns and minis that I need to knit in here, so I would really have to make it a priority to finish it anytime soon. think that's all I want to say about that. I do use 2.75 millimeter needles on this. I was using my signature needles, which work fine if I'm sitting at my dining room table and knitting. But if I'm sitting on the couch, I don't know why, but it was giving me wrist pain. It was just the angle. I think they're 7-inch needles, and I don't know, something about the angle I was having to hold them at, but only sitting on the couch. I didn't bring them in here, but now I've switched over to using a 16-inch Zing circular needle. So instead of straights, I'm using a circular, so they don't hang down so far. I think it's just the way that I knit. I never knit with straight needles, but so many people really enjoyed those signature needles for blankets like this that I gave them a shot, but I don't know. Like I said, they work sometimes, but not if I want to be comfy and sit on the couch. So that is all of my finished objects and my whips, but I'm not done talking about projects I've worked on. So like I mentioned at the beginning, today's my birthday, and I decided to take a week off of work, which meant I had some extra time. And every time I do that, I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to make some amazing progress. I'm going to get so many projects done. And inevitably, what I end up doing is working on a big project that I don't have a lot to show for, which is exactly the case this time. And I like it, but I don't like it. And let me explain. I was thinking in the back of my head that I would make so much progress on my sweater and I'd get all caught up on my minis, and maybe I would even have a chance to make some squares for my Jethro cardigan, which I have not touched. And what I ended up doing was spending probably close to 24 hours logging all of my yarn, or I shouldn't say all of it, probably 90 to 95% of my yarn on my Ravelry yarn stash. And if you have watched my State of the Stash episodes, you know that I have been making a conscious effort to use some stash, try not to bring in a lot more stash, because honestly, I'm out of places to put it. Yes, I could stack more boxes or, put stuff in the closet, all that, but I really want things to be in a usable form and also have less, honestly. I don't know what my perfect stash looks like. And I will go more into this on State of the Stash because that seems to be a more appropriate area to talk about this. But I am going to say, I took pictures of all of my full skeins of yarn and transferred them from my phone to my computer and then uploaded them. And it was time consuming, but the time just flew by. Like I would spend hours doing it and then not even realize how much time had passed. It was pretty crazy. I don't really know how long it took me, but I'm going to estimate it took about 24 total hours, which I did over the course of about 4 days. So there's a big chunk of my week. And then what I worked on the last 2 days after I finished the stash thing. See, I'm going to try and get this without knocking things over. Do you remember, maybe a few episodes ago, I think it was the beginning of summer, I started a king size quilt for my friend. And what I would have shown you back then would have been just the top, and I think I had it laid out on my king size bed. So I have, first of all, I picked out backing fabric, which are these. Oh, this thing is heavy, so heavy. These cute little stars, purple stars. And I got all of the quilting done as well. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. Hopefully you can see some stitches there. They are in a variegated purple, so a little bit hard to see on that probably. And I just did stitch in the ditch. But like I said, this thing's huge. It really is ginormous. I think My measurements are only estimates because I have no surface large enough where I can lay this out flat and completely measure it. But I think it's 113 by 108, something like that. And although it feels much heavier, according to my scale, it only weighs like 8 pounds. I don't even know how it's possible because it's huge. You might notice that the edges are still raw. So the only thing I have left to finish on this is to make some binding strips, which I got this pretty shimmery, iridescent kind of flower fabric. So I need to make the binding and then I need to sew the binding on. And just like the quilts that I made for my nieces, I'm going to machine sew the binding on because I've hand sewed it before and I do think it does look a bit nicer, but for the time it would take to hand sew this, I'm not doing that. So this, like I said, is for my very good friend and she's very worth it, but oh my gosh. I was telling Glenn, I don't know if I will ever do another king size quilt like that. I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to quilt it on my domestic quilting machine, my domestic sewing machine. I have a Singer 1, which I don't even think they make anymore. It's a couple years old. And I'm not really much of a quilter. I've made a few quilts. Maybe this might be number 5 or number 6 total. And they've all been pretty basic. Quilting is definitely intimidating to me. Squaring anything, like when I have to square that's like the hardest thing for me, getting anything to be actually square. So yes, it's hard. I did watch a tutorial where the person used sheetrock T-squares to square her quilt. She used 2 of them. I think I'm going to go buy some of those when I'm ready to do that and give that a try. The other thing I will say, even for as few quilts as I have finished and how much I don't sew, I highly recommend you take apart your sewing machine and clean it out, because I did that when I was done with the quilting today and I could not believe how much dust and just fibers were in there. This batting that I use, it's 100% cotton by Pellon, I think is the brand, and it made such a mess. I don't know if I just got a bad batch or if it's not a great brand. I bought a whole roll of it when it was Black Friday in 2023. And so for this quilt, I forgot to mention that since it's a king size and I have a queen size roll of the batting, I sewed it together, which worked pretty well. There's a couple spots where when I sewed it together, it looked like maybe one piece got stretched a bit, and so it was a bit warpy, and I was worried how that was going to look, but I think once it's all put together, I don't even think it's noticeable. For sure, I did not notice it at all when I was doing the quilting, which I was surprised because when I was just trying to put my layers together, I could feel it. But I think it's come out okay. And just like how my stitch in the ditch is not always in the ditch, once I wash it, it'll have some lumps and bumps anyway, and it won't be very noticeable. So I think it'll be just fine. So yes, I had my doubts on whether or not I could quilt that on my machine, and it wasn't easy at all, but it was doable. So that gives me more confidence. And although I was kind of saying I would never do another large quilt like this, now that I see it actually came out, I might. I'm not going to say anytime soon, but I might. So that is all of the crafting and crafting related stuff that I have worked on in the last 2 weeks, but really mostly in the last week since I've been off work. Now let's talk about books that I've read. I have to look at my list because I cannot remember. So let's see, I finished the book I talked about last time that I was reading, which was Going Rogue, which is by Janet Evanovich. And as I said before, I just love that whole series, the Stephanie Plum series. She's a private eye, and they're just hilarious. So I enjoyed that a lot. I gave it 4 stars. It was exactly the sort of mindless read that I needed. Then I started reading The Martian by Andy Weir, W-E-I-R, and I just went to my Libby app and I looked for what was available now. And that one came up and it had a lot of good ratings. And I know that they made a movie out of it, but I hadn't seen the movie and I still haven't. So I started reading that. But while I was reading that, one of the books I had on hold through Libby came available. And that was Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano. And The Martian was on loan and this one was on loan. But the difference is The Martian was available. And Dear Edward, I had to wait for quite a long time. So I started reading that immediately. I put The Martian on hold and I finished it, gosh, probably 3 days maybe. It was a very fast read. It was a good read. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. And let's see, I'll tell you briefly what it's about. It's about a young boy who is in a plane crash. And of course, you can imagine being in a plane crash, your whole world would be turned upside down. And it's all about his story and how he deals with that. And I just thought it was really good. So after I finished reading that, I went back to The Martian. And another book I had on hold came available, which I wasn't expecting. And that book is Hillbilly Elegy. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Elegi by J.D. Vance, who is one of the candidates for vice president. He is Donald Trump's running mate. So I was very curious to read that and see what he had to say. And I'm not too far into it, maybe 25 or so percent. And it's pretty interesting so far. So I'm enjoying that. But once again, I had to wait for that one. So The Martian's on hold. So I'm hoping that I will be able to renew The Martian, but I know I won't be able to renew Hillbilly Elegy. So that one kind of like moved up on my priority list. So I generally don't like to hop around like that with different books, but it's hard when you have stuff on hold because if you were to opt out of that, like who knows how long it would be before I would get the opportunity again. So that is crafting and reading. And now let's talk a little bit about life stuff. I mentioned during the beginning here that 45 is a big birthday for me. And the reason that that's the case is that my dad died when he was 44. So I feel like it's extra special to have made it to 45 because that's not something that he could say. And I kind of thought I might have a little bit of, I don't know if midlife crisis is the right word. I don't think so. But I was worried about 44 just because, like, I don't know. It just kind of like sticks out as like not a good thing. Does that even make sense? It probably doesn't. But, you know, I look at 44 or 45 now and I just think, how young is that? Still so much life to live. Still, you know, energy and vitality and all this. And then to think, you know, of course I was very young, but my dad was 44 and he was an old 44, if you know, there's such a thing. But just to see the differences and of course to have made it to this point and not have heart disease, which is great because that's what he died of. And so it's just kind of like, I think I always had in the back of my mind, like, not necessarily that that would happen to me, but it could. And so it feels really good to turn 45. Yeah, I don't know. Some people really don't like turning older or admitting how old they are. And I don't know. So far, it doesn't bother me. My husband is the complete opposite. He does not want to acknowledge how old he is, doesn't want to think about it, talk about it, anything. And for me, I just feel like one more year wiser and smarter and better able to tackle the world, hopefully. I'm not on that downward slope yet, I think. Although, 45, that probably is about halfway through life. I mean, if I'm really healthy, it's like halfway through life, because that would mean I'd be 90, which that's old. So I guess we don't really know what's in store for us, but all I know is that I'm very happy to be where I am now, and I don't know. Does that make any sense? It probably doesn't. I don't think I can articulate it very well. All I know is that I'm just very grateful and thankful for where I'm at in my life. Things could always be better, but they could be a whole hell of a lot worse too. So, on that fun, depressing note, I hope that you are all doing well. I'd love to hear what project you're working on. And I think probably when I go back and edit this, I'm going to make the decision not to record at the end of the day again, because I'm not sure that any of this made any sense. But thank you for hanging out with me anyway. And cheers to another year. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.